Welcome to Playing with Inference, a podcast on the intersection of AI and games. Today we're talking about playful creation, my favorite topic. Today we're talking to Nuno Leiria, founder of Nilo, a platform for creating games at the speed of play. Prior to Nilo, Nuno has been working in games for over 15 years with various leading engineering roles at Fortnite, Fable, and many others. And as far as I understand, always focusing on the game engine side. Welcome, Nuno.
Thank you. I'm happy you like playful creation so much.
So the other people from the podcast mock me because I bring it up every single time. I, with a straight face, claim it as my own term. For the audience that has heard me say that before, Nuno is the one. We were at GDC and he dropped it in a conversation. I was like, oh my God, that's such a great term. I'm going to steal it. You have a long history in games, and specifically in game engines, which I find very fitting to what you're doing at Nilo. We can talk about Nilo in a bit. And also, a recent transition was coming from a startup that was AI in games to then found Nilo. One of the things, if you are in the space in AI in games, and part of this podcast is putting people who are in the space, you notice that there are a lot of entry points for generative AI in the development of games, whether for the mechanics or like in the process of development of games. I'm curious, tell us about your background and how you think generative AI enters all of this. You clearly had to make a lot of decisions in how you compose all of these tools within Nilo. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what Nilo is. And I'm curious of how that experience colored that, because it clearly comes with a lot of experience.
I'm going to give a little background on myself, my experience with the games industry, and why that led me to create Nilo. I've been making games since I was 12. I was playing Final Fantasy VII back in the day. I had the distinct feeling of, oh, wow, what I'm feeling right now is what I would like other people to feel as well. I knew that I was always going to be in the games industry since then. I taught myself programming, games programming, and I did computer science and engineering in Lisbon. But because there are no games in Lisbon or game development, then I had to leave. I did a master's in games programming in the UK. And since then, I've worked on various different titles, Reason 3 and ALX, the creators of Gothic. Then I worked at Lionhead on Fable Legends, worked on Fortnite and Unreal Engine 5 and different kinds of startups. So always working on the game engine side. Graphics, physics, networking, AI, PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, Xbox, like all the consoles, memory, performance, all of that stuff is my jam. All these years working in games, one thing has always frustrated me, which is that playing games is a lot of fun, but creating games is extremely frustrating. Content is super hard to create. The tools are super hard to use. If I'm going to be doing this for decades, might as well have a great time doing it. It's not that I'm not enjoying it, but man, it's more frustrating than it should be. So I've always been trying to find better ways of doing all the processes in game development. And then generative AI appeared. When generative AI entered the field, I could see how it was creating 3D models, creating animations, generating codes, and all of the difficult parts of game development were being solved. Things that required teams of professionals to do, now people could just prompt away. This is the thing that I was waiting for. Now with the team, we could create an experience where creation feels like play. That's the playful creation, right? Because now you could feel like you're inside of a game, where basically you're creating. Oh, I want a car. Bam, car appears. I want a car to move. Now the car moves. If you build it like we did in Nilo, you build a multiplayer environment where people are also there. So you also see people's creativity. If someone creates Hello Kitty, you're like, then I want a doll. And the creativity plays off of each other. Because creation becomes so easy, you can just use your voice or text. It feels like you're just playing, but actually you're creating. So it's like playing with digital Legos. And it came out of that frustration of why does it have to be so hard?
Playing with digital Legos. So how much of this playing with digital Legos is about creating? So when people build things in Nilo, are they building like dioramas or they're doing like the little things and the fun is just the creating and then nobody comes and plays? Or are they actually creating experiences that they share with other people? And I ask this because one of the things, the way I normally phrase this is like, when I go to ChatGPT and write my fan fiction, I do it for myself, right? And nobody gives two rats ass about my Elder Scrolls fan fiction I co-wrote with ChatGPT, but I have a lot of fun writing it, right? And I consume it sometime later on, but it's just for me to consume and to create. I wonder when people are exposed to this ability of creating games, are they creating games for others to play or games for themselves to play, or just the creating part is what they play?
It's actually both. Some people like the experience of building alone. Some people like the experience of building with others and want to
Mm.
socialize. We built Nilo as a platform. It's not just for you to create games, it's a platform where you can find the games and 3D worlds that other people have built. And so we see a lot of people after building, they say, this is the idea that I had in mind. And so they just go publish. And now it's online and other people
Mm.
can see it. And some people really enjoy seeing what other people do in their worlds. And that's the thing that they actually enjoy. And so it depends on what kind of builder you are. There's people for each type.
Gotcha. I want to go back to the game engine part. You were saying that when Gen AI appeared, it you were like, oh, this is what I needed. This is where I wanted to make the process of making games more fun. But from your past experience, like when designing Nilo, what were the technical or what were the core principles that you thought beyond the Gen AI? What are the core principles from your learning of game engines that you were like, it has to be like this, it has to be like that? One clear example is my understanding is Nilo is all browser based, right?
Mhm.
There is probably a story of why it's browser based and the trade-offs that are there. But I presume that there's a lot of decision making based on that experience. What were the main learnings from touching all of these past game engines
Mm.
and getting to create your own?
That's a great question. One of the main ones is fast feedback loops. There's something that happens in tools that allow you to create that they're slow. They
Yeah.
have a lot of options. It's hard. Like you don't feel like you're in flow. And basically, Nilo actually, the name of the company is based after flow, from the flow of creative self-expression from Csikszentmihalyi. I want people when they're using Nilo to feel like they're in flow, not toggling things. When I
Mm.
think of flow, I think of a river. And so name of a river, one of the biggest one is the Nile. And so Nilo is the Nile, but in Spanish
Oh.
and Portuguese. My family is from Africa. That's where the Nile starts. That's where the Nile ends. And so
I never connected it to. I don't know. For whatever reason, I thought that's probably a play with his name. Is Nuno Nilo. Okay. Sorry.
that's a coincidence. But also, it's really cool that you can get the Nilo.io, which is a really good URL as well.
That
But
is
yeah,
surprising.
it's
Sorry,
surprising
continue.
that the URL is available, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's that idea of flow, right? I want to avoid that creation where you're like clicking on boxes, high quality, low quality, and like you're not really enjoying the process of creation as much. And I wanted to change that. So fast feedback loops is one of the biggest things. So going to what you were saying, why is it in the browser? It's in the browser because it needs to be collaborative. One of the things that hasn't changed in the games industry for a very long time is a new distribution model. We've been saturating mobile growth for quite a while. There's not that many people
Mm.
joining with a new mobile phone. People are having 2 or 3 mobile phones at this point. There's quite a lot of saturation in the industry. That's why it's only growing at 1% instead of 10%, as always has been. There are many factors for this, but that's one. And so the way that we're going to improve the industry is by having new distribution models. And I think that one of the best distribution models is actually one of the oldest, which is just sharing the link. Games don't have access to it usually because you need to download, you need to install, games are heavy, all of those things. But we arrived at the point where the browsers are quite mature with
Yeah.
APIs like WebAssembly, WebGPU, and cloud storage. All of these advances make it possible to run 3D games in the browser, not Unreal Engine AAA games, but also not 2D casual games. Generative AI plus the browser makes it so we could actually just share a link with someone else and we're playing together super easily. I don't want to download 100 gigabytes and then have to install my previous game because I don't have space. Another thing that I think would be important to mention is how we design the UI. The UI feels like a game. It's prepared for an era of spatial computing where generative AI is going to surface for you menus as you need them, when you need them, no more, no less. This comes from learning a lot about game design. What if we designed a
Mm.
creative tool that learns from what games have already came up with in terms of affordances? Like how should you click on things? What should progress feel like? How can we tell you what action you should be doing next? We can learn a lot from what games have figured out to create a creation experience where actually a lot of those elements are present rather than just putting a bunch of menus. We're actually showing you what you can do and what can be done just by using game-like elements. And this, by giving it a specific example, this is where the radio menu comes from. You have games like Red Dead Redemption using radio menu. Well, that's basically how you're creating Nilo. You just hit a radio menu. Now you're creating things.
Is what I heard right? What is available in that radial menu is being generated on the fly, or is it something that you store? It sounds to me like it's very contextual when you open the menu, what is there.
It's not AI generating the menu, but all the content is contextual. Every time you click on something, it understands what the thing actually is and changes the menu and gives you options depending on what it is.
But you require some sort of predictability or reliability for that to work. Like the player creator needs to know what to expect.
Yes, but there's only a few types of things, right? If the user understands, hey, this is mesh, or this is a primitive, and you show the user what the things actually are, then you're like, hey, there are different options for different things here. And it's not that there's an infinite amount of them. There's a few. And then it's not that difficult for a user to pick that up and understand.
I really like that radial menu. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I have to put it somewhere. I really love it. I agree with you in the menu bar and all of that. I like the whole, you press it here and then the radial menu appears and it's just, okay, that makes a lot more sense.
Did you use it on something after that?
In our game, we have an action. It's a monster trainer that you train your monsters, right? So with your voice, and we do real-time coaching. We have the ability of storing abilities so that you can, with a whistle, command a certain move that you've already trained. And we have a radial menu for that. And so like
amazing.
Whenever you do a whistle, it's like you select from the things that you've equipped. It looks so nice. But I want to see it more often in other, and like in more productivity tools, right? What I was going to ask is, I can see the inspiration from the game side, but I wonder what is the closest not game. When you were talking about this, I was trying to think of what is the most fun game creation software or engine or editor out there. I don't know what that is. I guess RPG Maker, wasn't it like that? Or maybe you can consider some level designs within a game to be gamey enough. What do you think prior to pre-Gen AI? What would be the most fun you've had creating a game or had closest to what you would consider fun to create?
That's an interesting question. I used RPG Maker, I've used Scratch, and maybe it's about the age that we use these things, but I actually had fun creating with RPG Maker because it also was so simple and accessible. But actually, a lot of the inspiration from Nilo didn't come from these tools. It came from outside of the industry. Tools like Houdini. Of course, I looked into Roblox Studio and Unity, and I've used these tools for a very long time. But looking at Adobe tools and how they do specific things, or even Blender, there's a lot of 3D creativity tools that we can learn from. And now, of course, with generative AI, there's a lot of tools that have new paradigms of how to do the UI interface. So I also take inspiration from that, blending that with what we've seen from games. You can see a little bit of the DNA of different fields coming together to make it simple. But to answer your question, it's probably RPG Maker that you mentioned.
Yeah, because I've been trying to think. So you could make a case of Godot is more fun to use than Unity, but it's still very much in the this is a adult tool type of thing, right? It's not a we're playing a game and it happens to generate games type of environment. I was surprised when I tried Roblox the first time, expecting it to be much more of a game creating games, but instead it was closer to a full-blown editor. I guess it makes sense, but I was expecting something more akin to RPG Maker or whatnot.
You mean Roblox Studio?
Correct.
It feels like this new generation, you have 400 million monthly active users on Roblox, right? These are young people, not like 40-year-old creative professionals that learn Unity and Unreal Engine all the time, right? Once someone of that generation thinks, I would like to create a game so that I can be with my friends, the next step is I'm going to learn Roblox Studio. They're like, what? This looks like Photoshop. You just came from a game and now you're going to learn this tool. How do I make a model? Now I need to learn Blender. How do I code? Oh, now I need to learn programming. You're like, what? You're like 14.
That's a good question. So this frames it a little bit on the like, I am in a game. I want to edit the game. I want to create a game. And then I need to create the assets and so on. This is like this depth of all the skills that it takes to create that redemption, right? It's a long ladder until you reach that. and it's not smooth. Like you start with scratch or you start with a game, and it's just a long process of getting there. Presumably, that's a little bit of where Nilo comes in. But I wonder, is it your goal to bridge all the way into like professional programmer, or is it all like more UGC type of platform where it's mostly more toy games? I don't want to say toy games because people have generated serious games on Roblox, and I imagine people are going to create serious games in Nilo. But you get my point, right? Is someone going to professionalize enough where they're going to open up Blender and import into Nilo? Or is this like after they graduate Nilo, they go on and open up Unreal?
What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know where Nilo is, but here let me state how it looks to me, right? I see I'm playing a game and I can edit it in the same way that I play the game. And all of that is fine. The premise of Nilo feels very much that you are playing and there's some amount of edit. At some point, there's this tension between the control that you give the player on the creations and the ability to play or just interact with it. And I don't know how smooth can you navigate that tension, or at some point you have to just give up and say, we're just going to give you a grown up tool, right? Like it's a little bit like even if you just narrow down to 3D mesh generation, yes, I go into Meshy and I put something and good, I can use this. But the moment you want to do this for a AAA game, you probably want to open up Blender or Houdini, or I remember the other one, but one of these professional tools, do all the editing, import it into the game engine, do all the rigging and whatnot. And that's a very different tool. I want all of my menus and tools and scriptings. And I wonder how that looks like. I'm 14. I've been playing with Nilo. I want to create my own game, and I want to go a bit further. How does that jump look like?
I started Nilo thinking from first principles. I didn't want to just copy what other tools have done. It would be very easy for me to just say, here's a play mode, a play button. This is how you change between creation and play. Not doing that forced us down a path of figuring out how do you do creation and play in one, which I think is something that we've done really well. It enables things that weren't possible before, at least I haven't experienced as much. But during this exploration, we actually hit this friction point where control trades off against pure fun. You can see this in a very simple case where the user is now clicking on a cube and moving it around. It's like dragging control. So you can drag it. But then you have a choice. Either you give the user snapping so that a cube can snap into another cube and go little by little so that you have control over what you're doing. Or you could just say the user can flick their cube around and it just goes into space if they release it while they're moving it. One is more like sandbox. The other is more like a creation tool. You cannot have the two of them together, right? So you start to see this tension everywhere. And where we're going with Nilo is actually going to have different modes. One of them is going to be a more creator mode, where you're going to have menus. You're going to be able to, the menus are going to get out of your way so that you have a full screen game experience almost. But if you want, you can edit the code, the menus, you can do your specific things. And then once you publish, what the player is going to see is a full-blown game, right? That is just as the creator intended. That's how we resolve the tension. We break it apart, but we make the creation experience still feel like play. To your other point, will a user be able to go into Blender and then drag and drop the thing? And they can already do that. We can already integrate through USD, GLTF, GLB, all of the 3D standard formats. We can import and export across all of the tools. So you can move things from Houdini and Blender and whatever into Nilo, and then you can export it and continue in another 3D tool if you wanted to.
Talk to me a little bit of what are the different modalities that you're composing within Nilo. So just to color a little bit, I saw your demo at our Tech Week event. Very cool. And I remember there's some amount of asset creation, there's some amount of animating the assets, there's scripting, which I think is super cool. What are the different modalities that you're currently composing in there?
You mean the actual modes like create, play, or the different things we can do inside of Nilo?
From a generative AI perspective, it's a full-blown game engine and game, but the big unblock is all of these generative AI models that you get to compose in a way that is ergonomic for the player to use for creating. I'm curious, what are those modalities you're using and how they integrate into Nilo?
So you can create 3D models by dragging and dropping an image, or using text, say, I would like something, 3D object or a character. That creates a 3D model. That 3D model can then be rigged. So that's another AI model doing the rigging. Then you can edit commands and code. So then you can say, let's say that you create a plane, and then you say, I want this plane to fly. Then you have an AI model generating code that you can then edit on the fly, right? But it's an AI model that generates the beginning, so you don't need to know how to code. We have image models. So we have a tool called Doodle, where you can just draw on a canvas, like you draw a tree, and then you see an actual tree being generated with an image on the side. And you can say, I want to add apples, or I want the leaves to be yellow. And it's actually doing those edits in real time. And then when you're ready, you can just drag and drop it. That image becomes your 3D model with the background removed. So let's say that you wanted to create a character. So now you have an AI model, you're generating the images, you're iterating, you get the look you want, and then you drag it into 3D so you get your character. And once you have that character, now you can rig it and then you can animate it. We can generate animations on the fly after they are rigged. And then you can add code. We don't have audio yet, but eventually we're able to generate sound effects and audio as well. You're going to be able to generate scripts, stories. You're going to be able to have characters that are speaking with you and to each other because they have text to speech and speech to text. We're going to integrate all of these models into a seamless experience where you're not even knowing that you're using AI or there's anything happening. Like, it's all seamless.
One of the challenges of allowing for freeform input in game creation is that it hides the capabilities or limitations of the models that you're using. So in our game, for example, there's a finite things that the monster can actually do. All of your commands have to be a composition of those actions. And you can say things very high level, I don't know, go and attack that guy or dance. Behind the scenes, the model breaks that down into a script that maps to the things that actually happen in the game. But then problematic for us is that there are things like there's no dancing move yet. But if you ask the model to dance, it will jump around and run around because the model thinks that's the closest thing for dancing. But if you say, I don't know, build a massive ice dragon with a horn, we don't have that, right? The fact that we allow the player to speak into the microphone, and it's sort of an implicit contract of you let me do anything and you didn't deliver the promise. So a lot of the challenge we see is how do we educate the player or steer the player towards what it can do versus what it cannot do, and at the same time how do you deal with the limitations whenever we can't do that. In our game it's hard to say the monster shouldn't go back and say I can't do a dragon, but maybe it should be like confused or like it hurt itself in its confusion, some sort of thing like that. I wonder how it works in your case. My understanding is, for example, Gen AI animations are very limited right now, or mostly limited to humanoids or bipedals and quadrupeds, right? So if I have an octopus or if I have some weird spider, I would imagine I would quickly reach the limitations of what a lot of these animations models would be. So how do you deal with those? How do you feed that back to the creator so that they know they're reaching a limitation?
Yeah, it's a great question. This actually gets to the philosophy behind Nilo. We knew that would happen. As soon as we put a prompt box, people are going
Yeah.
to make me Fortnite. Like, that's just a bad experience.
Yes,
We're not going to be able to do that.
The monster should be able to just win the game. I should be able to say kill everybody, and it should just do it. All
It's
right.
not even realistic, but the user is going to ask for whatever they want, right? And so I knew that was going to happen, and I didn't want to give that experience to users, or at least avoid it as much as possible. That's why you don't see a prompt in Nilo. We don't want to give the user the illusion that they can do prompt to game, right? So we don't make that promise. And whenever you see the code editor or you try to create something, it's always in the context of something else. That editor is there in the context of an entity. You apply operations in the entity itself and not across the world. If you were to apply an operation to a world, we have something that is called creative generation. So let's say that you want to say, create me Disney castle that has some flags waving. Instead of going through a standard 3D model or some world creation that actually has a lot of limitations and is just not going to work and is not going to be a good user experience, what we do is use an AI model that takes primitives and builds things out of primitives in real time. It builds things out of cubes and triangles and stuff like that, makes them move and injects code in the world itself. So the user probably does not get another 3D model. No, it's going to create something in front of you in real time that is maybe even more delightful than what you were expecting, right? And so it's about giving the user something that has that fast feedback loop, like I mentioned before. It gives them something that is delightful that they can always do a next action with, even if it's not something they were expecting.
Yeah, the way I've been thinking about this is that vibe creation is like a slot machine. You put something in, you pull the arm, you put prompts in and some tokens, and then you pull the arm, and then and then something gets out. And the key is that it doesn't have to be perfect, but you have to celebrate what the player said. Your promise is that you will celebrate the input. Even if you did it poorly, it should be comically poorly or a best effort type of thing. So basically, you let the model work with a set of primitives to do its best, and then the player can iterate over that.
That's one of the things we can do. If the user wants to draw something, maybe you don't know what's going to come out. Maybe you create a first model out of clay. That's clearly not what the user wanted, but you gave them something. So I'm agreeing with you. It's like you give them something and then they can iterate over it. And oh, more like this. I wanted Minecraft style. Okay. And now we're getting closer to what you wanted. Just having that feedback loop and something being delightful very quickly is extremely important.
What modalities are you more eager or anxiously waiting for them to get better? Another way to say is, do you have a magic wand to give like a eureka moment to some research lab scientist and something gets solved within reason? What are you hoping for?
That's a good question. I've been positioning Nilo such that it always goes with the scaling laws. Like every time AI models get better, Nilo gets better, even if I didn't change anything under the hood, be it in coding, in generation, and anything. But if you were to ask me if there's one thing that you would change now that would make Nilo instantly better in AI, even if it's already positioned to take advantage of all the good things, it would be unified rigging. Just unified rigging.
Okay.
So if you were to give it a bird, it understands the bone structure of a bird and creates a skeleton the same way that it would create for a character, the same way that it would create for a blob. So the user would be able to create anything. And a model in a few seconds should be able to understand the structure, create bones that then can be animated, and that currently does not exist.
So in our side, like we've been thinking about how do we create more creatures for the game, right? And in the end of the day, it's supposed to be a monster trainer. There should be more than one monster. And we've been thinking of what does it look like to use generative AI to create them. The problem is if you just ask generative AI, like Meshi, to create a monster, there's still a lot of work to be done, and it's often subpar. It's not perfect out of the box, especially if you're trying to do a more serious game. If you're trying to put something on Steam, the expectation is pretty high, right? But what I've been thinking is that there should be a modern version of creating characters or animated objects in that sense, where you start off by generating a rig that then whatever 3D mesh generation model builds on top of, instead of going the other way, which is what I've seen mostly, that you create first a 3D mesh and then you're trying to like bolt a rig on top of that, which feels the wrong way, right? Like it's flesh grows around our bones rather than we don't get bones inserted to us. And it's also easier, like you can start with a set of primitive bone structures or rigs that you just flesh out. But I haven't seen any model that generates around the rig versus generating from an image or from scratch. Have you seen any research in that area?
I think that's a good intuition and it makes sense. The problem is we don't have enough data for this. Even for 3D models, like we have great models for images because there's so many images, like and text, and the same thing with video. But even 3D models, the quality does not increase at the same pace as these others because we don't have that much data on 3D models. We have Objaverse, Objaverse XL, and all of that. But like you start to get into rigs, you're like, where do you find a data set of rigs in the millions? So it's really hard. It depends on compute, it depends on data.
Have you seen Pixel Labs? They generate sprites. They have models for generating sprites. One of the cool features that they have is they have, how to say, I guess it's rigs for character positions. So you have the full animation. You can move the bones of the character and it generates the image following those.
Hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of work on the image generation that has control features, as in like ways that allow the user to steer generation, that are very absent on the image side, sorry, on the 3D side. And I wonder if that's the route. Do we need some sort of like control net equivalent for 3D meshes?
Perhaps the way that we're doing it now is we're bypassing 3D, allowing users to edit in 2D and then
Mm,
bring it into 3D. What we want to do later is we want you to be able to edit the bone structure itself, like
mm.
adding small and simple controls on top of generation so that you feel like you have some control over the process. But right now, we're working around the limitations of the models themselves.
I want to go back to the people who are playing. Is it mostly kids? I think in your footage, I've seen mostly kids giggling and having fun. Is that the main demographic?
First, we need creators. We need what we're calling the aspiring builders. They're not creative
Mm,
professionals. They didn't spend 20 years learning Unreal Engine, but also they're not just players. They actually want to create. Maybe they've been creating in places like VR Chat or Rec Room. Maybe they've dabbled in Roblox Studio, but it was too hard. So these aspiring builders, they're the ones that are going to be building in Nilo first and creating content that is fun and engaging that you can't find anywhere else. Players are going to find that content and they'll say, oh, I can just clone this world and change things super easily. Those players will then become aspiring builders themselves. And eventually, some of them will become professional creators in their own right.
I see. So you're starting with aspiring people who are already trying. What are they doing today? Are they building on Roblox or wanting to build in Roblox?
They're learning Blender, they're in
Oh
Unity,
wow.
they're in Roblox Studio, they're in Rec Room, they're in VR Chat, they're all over building in these different kind of tools and not having a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's a key part. The reason why I asked is in my mind, what I had was you have kids on their iPad plates. Like there's a lot of similarities with Roblox. So I was thinking very much on like kids on their fortified iPads playing Roblox, or in your case, playing Nilo. I guess you could always just create an app, but in my mind, kids click on the app on the iPad and then they open that versus going into the browser. I presume you'll have a native app that is the local port.
There are very easy ways for us to move things from the web. So with Capacitor, like there are technologies that allows you to just create an actual app from a browser. Perhaps the market will tell us that this is what we have to do, especially if you take into account that monetization and credit cards are tied to the stores. And so people don't
Yeah.
trust as much the web to put their credit cards there. And you have notifications and retention and all of that. For now, we're betting on the browser, and because you can't beat just sharing a link. It's just
I completely agree that the browser is the lowest friction you can get in today's world. But at the same time, it hasn't stuck, right? I don't think none of the modern game companies have actually made it big on browser. It's always on one of the marketplaces or app stores.
why do
And
you
I
think that
wonder if,
is?
yeah, I was gonna say, my hunch, and I've asked people around it, so it's not like playful creation. It's not entirely my idea. I think there's it's a part of easy come, easy go. When I open a tab and I go into anything in the web, the same frictionless opening is also the same frictionless closing. Like I open, if you look at my browser, it's thousands of tabs, and every now and then I just select all close and I declare browser bankruptcy. I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm missing. I don't know what I forgot. I just can't do this anymore. And then I close everything. If I'm playing a game in the browser, I'm competing with every other tab and I'm just switching and I'm just going to close it. And it's just less sticky. Versus if I open Steam, that same friction of having to open Steam and load the game. Now I'm committed to play Baldur's Gate for the next 3 hours. Okay, I'm here. I'm going to play. And I wonder if that's a big part, right? Maybe it's a proxy for intent or willingness to spend time in the application. So that's one of my leading hypotheses. And the other is what you talk about was like people have their money their wallets on the App Store, on Steam. So that's where the applications are published. So that means that's where discoverability happens. If I'm going to find the next thing I'm going to play, I'm going to open Steam and look for it. Or if I want a language learning app, I am going to open Play Store, and that's where I look for language learning apps and look at the reviews instead of clicking on the browser and looking through that. It's not true for everybody. Some things I rather just look online and then limit to Reddit so that it's not spam. I think those are the two main things, right? It's a matter of discoverability and monetization and the high intent that comes with opening an actual app versus opening a browser tab.
I think that's true, and I think there's a lot more reasons that we can add to that, but maybe the games just aren't good enough. How much do you go to Gmail or Facebook on a browser? There are some things that you just open the tab again and you're coming back to it all the time, and the retention is off the charts.
If I don't use Facebook anymore, but Twitter, Blue Sky, or
right.
any
or
of these social media.
Or Figma.
Yeah. I'm thinking about Figma. I don't use Figma, but I'm thinking of other apps. What I was going to say about Gmail and Facebook and Twitter and all of the social media stuff is that if I close it and open it again, it opens very quickly, and there's no session that I care about too much. There's no penalty for me to close it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I'm playing a game, it really depends on the game. But if I close it, I broke something there in that there was a session there that I would play, and now there's a friction of how do I resume that, which is. I'm trying to think if there's an equivalent. There's some apps that I really like. I don't remember if it's AliDraw or Draw.io, that whenever you open the browser, it'll drop you right where you were last time. That feels very nice because it feels like that's my room. I left it there and I can leave and come back. I think that's key for something to stick on the browser, because you should expect people to be closing and opening all the time.
But that's part of my point. Games are not built with the browser in mind, so they're not that good, right? Remember Agar.io and all of these IO games that everyone was playing all the time? Like, people were coming back to those games all the time because they were built for the web. People were having fun playing socially, multiplayer, and they could come in and out very quickly. It was a big thing, but they were built for the web. I think part of the problem is the platforms, the APIs, the structure itself, they were not good enough to support good games. No one could build the tools so that developers could actually build good games on it. You don't have the Unreal Engines and the Unities of the web that would allow you to create great games. You have some tools that allow you to create 2D games, but even the technology of today, you don't have a really good UDP or web transport layer for the web. Everyone uses TCP and WebSockets. TCP has head-of-line blocking. You're not going to create a shooter on the web, and nobody cares because nobody has built a framework that does what I'm saying. No respectable online game uses TCP for its multiplayer, but on the web, that's not a thing. So we're still at this level of technology, and if we don't even have the infrastructure and the scaffolding, you cannot create the Unreal Engine or Unity that would allow millions of people to create great games, which means that you don't have great games, which means that you don't have examples of people going, of course, I can create this type of things that people are just coming back all the time because they are great experiences that cannot be had anywhere else. I don't think we've reached that stage and that point.
So you think it's a limitation on the APIs and other low-level stuff that the browser supports?
It starts with that. It's many things at once, right?
I'm saying on the technical side that you're raising, it has to be like, one example is like recently WebGPU has been a more common thing, and it's unblocked a lot of like 3D type of games on the browser, and not only games, but proper visualization applications. What you're saying is like there has to be other type of building blocks or like APIs like WebGPU, but across different domains that allow you to compete with native in a very one-to-one way.
We need to have APIs like WebGPU, like WebAssembly, like Web Transport. Only now are they arriving at a meaningful market share that is not even 80% in the case of WebGPU because Apple. But like all of these technologies needs to be there. That's a foundational layer that then enables you to create tools on top that are easy to use. This is where Nilo also tries to be, so that then developers can actually create experiences. And those are the things that are going to attract players, experiences that you are so good you cannot have anywhere else, that you have to go there to play them. Once you have that, now you have the players. The
I see.
developers need that incentive and say, oh, I have so many people to build for. If there isn't, developers, so it's a chicken and egg, right? You need to solve this somehow, and it starts with the lowest layer, just having a good platform of people that want to play that you can monetize.
You talk about experiences that you can't get anywhere. And from what we discussed, it sounds to me like browser is naturally a disadvantage because it has to catch up with a lot of the affordances that native has. Are there, other than being able to open it ASAP, which maybe there's a way of exploiting that for an experience, but what are advantages of the browser that allow you to build experiences that you can't have elsewhere? What's a killer game or app of the browser beyond social media?
So for me, I think it's going to be about social creation and play that is extremely low friction. Imagine that I can connect you playing on your phone with someone playing inside of Discord, with someone playing on their desktop, and we're all playing together the same experience. Now imagine that maybe you have generative AI inside the game itself. Maybe you're
I
playing
see.
a Lemmings game where it can generate whatever, and you need to remove the block or put a specific block so that the lemming doesn't fall. Like that kind of social connectivity, regardless of platform, especially using technologies that can be called with an API request. There's something there that feels slightly magical that is really hard to get anywhere else because of the friction itself. So it's like very low friction social 3D play. And I'm starting to call it social 3D creation.
Let me take note. Terms.
Social 3D creation is going to be a thing. Like you're going to
So
start creating 3D things that are more akin to memes. People are
so
going to be able to just generate things on the fly and then drop them off.
I like this because I think it pairs well with Gen AI. One of the things I've noticed is that, so take Cloud Code. When I use it for building stuff, I often use it for things that are on the margin, like things that I wouldn't do. I'm like, I'm gonna put $10 on the slot machine and see if Cloud Code does it for me. That's the type of thing that I'm throwing there. I feel myself reaching for my phone. I don't have Cloud Code there. I know there's some people who have deployed and whatnot, but I can feel the pull for, oh, I would love to try this because it's on the margin, it's a random idea, and I just want to put coins on that slot machine and see if I can get it out of the door. I know that Replit has deployed their vibe coding on the phone, and they have a lot of use. Like people actually use it on the phone, which is really anomalous, as in historically people don't code on their phones. You want your keyboard and your two screens and whatnot, right? I think what you're saying resonates with that, right? The lowering of frictions from anybody can be anywhere with creating is also very easy, so you can do it from your phone while on the Uber. I think that's a good story for why does a browser provide this type of advantage.
So people keep talking about this 1-9-90. 1% of people create, 9% of people edit and comment, and 90% consume, meaning that it's a law of the universe and the human condition that most people are consumers. Just a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
Sam Altman said more than 30% of active users are active creators. Why? Because it was a social experience that had extremely low friction to create. And
Yeah.
now a lot of people can create, which means that they will, because it's also within human nature to be able to be playful and to create and to play with Legos. And so if that's true, and we have examples like TikTok and Instagram, and it's not as hard as YouTube with its YouTube studio to create, right?
Yeah.
If you remove the friction, people will be able to create. And that's one of the bets we're making on that future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that 1990 is very much like based on, you have to think that there's a demand curve, like a typical economics econ 101 type of thing, right? Like your demand curve for what how much are you willing to pay in time and money for creating what you want to create, and every time you reduce that cost on the margin, you get a bunch of new people the jump into creating. My example of cloud code is very much in that sense, but it's just like in my, it's not even different persons. Like even me, I create more because there's things that it would be random as ideas, but now it's just I can just try it for free or for $2 or whatever, and
Right.
maybe it works, and I'm just gonna try it. I think that is a very big change. I think there's a, when talking about games, so in Twitter, I could technically, everybody can post, right? When I first opened my Twitter account, everybody can post, and I often felt like I had to come with very clever tweets before writing everything else. The friction is the same as everybody else, right? But it's just the pressure of having to be at the standard that I'm seeing on my timeline that was more censoring. And I wonder if there's something of that, like if you make it very easy to create, and presumably if whatever you put it in always has a expected outcome, as in it doesn't matter how skilled you are, you always get something that gets mediated by AI, so it doesn't matter. Okay, that's a different story. But if skill plays a matter, then presumably some people are going to get very good at creating stuff. And when you see the absolutely crazy games that they produce, maybe I get censored because I'm like, there's no way I get to create something like that, even if the friction is very low. Do you think that's something that happens in different platforms? Do we as humans get censored by other, or is it just Ramon being like coy?
No, I think you're totally right. I felt the same thing when joining Twitter, and you can see the same thing in Instagram, right? You see all of these perfect pictures, and you're like, oh, I gotta post my perfect picture too. It cannot just be random. I'm not gonna post that picture. It needs to be this quality, this standard. Or on Twitter, I need to come up with a perfect life quote so that people
Yes.
know that I'm smart. I'm just not gonna try things. I think it's there. And I think it's up to the platforms themselves to reduce that barrier also. So again, with Sora, the mechanic they released was one where you could put your cameo and use your friend's likeness and personality to send each other videos. They did that because during testing, they figured out that was the most interesting thing that people wanted to do. Not to generate random videos, but to generate videos of their dog or friends and send it to them. And because everyone else was doing that, it's okay to make fun of yourself too. That's what the platform promoted. So that's what people did. And everyone was not embarrassed to post their videos doing random things. It's about the platform.
I haven't used Sora, but this sounds very much on the trend of people retreating from the town square and into their close friends type of groups, right? People have moved back from Facebook and Twitter interactions and move into WhatsApp, Discord, and I guess some people Slack or LinkedIn. In part, I think because if it's your close group of friends and family, you feel like you can say anything. It doesn't matter. It's not longer the flame war. Does Sora promote that type of hanging out with your small social network, and that's how you promote?
You can, but you can also share those videos to the wider network because you find them funny. And my main point is just reduce the things that would normally be considered socially awkward. And if
Yeah,
those are celebrated, then you can.
yeah, but I think where I was going is it's less likely that I have a world-renowned game designer in my group of friends. So if I'm creating games in vibe coding or with Nilo or whatever, and I'm mostly exposed to the things that my friends are doing, then I feel a lot less stressed about what I create. It's all silly in games and nothing matters. But if what I'm doing is like putting everything on the mega timeline and comparing myself to the world, then I would feel a lot more censored about what I will put because I feel like I have to be an expert at everything. I wonder if that's something that is worth designing for, as in the main
Mhm.
interaction of sharing is about your close circles so that you never feel like you're competing against the world.
It's a good point. And I really Fortnite's design. Before games like Fortnite, you would hang around a multiplayer game, and at night you're a 30-year-old, you just came from work, you just want to play Call of Duty, and now you have a 13-year-old screaming at you, and you're like, what's this? Everyone has experiences where people are mingling on their voice chats, and you never know what you're gonna get. On Fortnite, your voice interaction is with your friends and you
Yeah.
need to add someone as a friend so you can interact with voice. That makes it so your interactions are you and your group of friends adventuring and journeying together, right? In the middle
Yeah.
of a whole world that exists with other people. Coming back to platform design, I think Nilo needs to solve this challenge too, right? It's platform discoverability. Do you see just perfect examples of games that are created by professionals, or social 3D memes and random things as well that make you feel like you can also create things to this standard? That's a challenge for us to solve, and we haven't solved it yet.
You know, this so this further reinforces, I feel like there are different pressure points towards small groups of your, like a small social network versus a big all-inclusive social network. Last time we were talking to Julian Togelius from Model AI, and he had this idea of an infinite world that adapts with the player. This is like one of these big holy grail of AI in games. And one of the problems with that is if a game adapts with you, then that's a very you game. You're not going to end up sharing too much. It's not going to be much of a shared experience with other people. If it's a game for everybody, then it's not that like the personalization gets lost. So I feel like there's some sort of small group secret sweet spot of, okay, it's a game that is for you and your friends, your shared secret that you enjoy. That's where the personalization ought to happen. And that's just another pressure point, right? Like also where you share is like that. I don't know. There's something about that I see recurring in multiple angles about small groups.
I would agree with that. I could see, and we already see this with Nilo, where people just create a game and they start creating on their own. It's like your own Discord group or WhatsApp group of people creating a game that they share. And eventually we'll add control so that only a few people on that specific server can also enjoy that game. I think those kinds of interactions people will start leaning a little bit more towards rather than the town square, what can I find here? And everyone is here, which some people will also continue to want, right? Because maybe you can make a friend that you could never meet before, but you need to provide multiple types of interactions and not just a one size fits all.
I like that. So we're running up to time. Anything you want to highlight?
It's a great question. Normally people ask, yes?
Yeah, go for it. I remember that I wanted to ask something else, but continue.
Normally people ask when they can play Nilo.
When can they play Nilo?
No, in 2026. So far, you can join our Discord and apply to be a founding builder. We're letting people in little by little, so it's not released yet.
Nice. Looking forward to it. What games have you built on Nilo?
Ooh,
or what's your favorite game you've built?
I've built mostly maps because we're still building all the tools necessary. This is why we haven't launched. We're still building the tools necessary for you and gameplay options to create full games. I haven't built a full game in Nilo yet because it's still not possible. One game that wasn't me, but is very fun to see play is The Floor is Lava. Now we have enough controls for you to put a little floor, a little platform, and then you have a character. When the character falls onto lava, it becomes a ragdoll. So it becomes super fun.
Love that. I love that. All right, Nuno, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for taking the time. How can people reach out to you if they want to join the Discord or just send you hate mail?
Yeah, so they can go to discord.gg/play, or they can go to our website, nilo.io. And if they want to go to my website, is my first name, my last name.com. My email is there. Feel free to send me hate mail. Come on, it was a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, Nuno. See you, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the full episode. We really hope you enjoyed the discussion. It would help us out a ton if you subscribed to the show on your platform of choice, as well as shared it with folks you think would find it useful. You can always check out playingwithinference.com to get in contact with us, join our Discord, or just find the links to the episodes. See you next week.